On this episode of the Mad Rush podcast.
My little college bootcamp idea was just some things I was thinking about that I wish I had thought through a little bit more before going off to college in terms of social emotional support. I know these private schools and some of the public schools are doing a great job of supporting their students academically and giving them resources, and getting them into college. I fully know they're doing that. But sometimes I think some of these smaller pieces, for example, setting boundaries with parents and expectations, is that maybe talked about before you're going off to college.
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Trisha Addix, the original sorority rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. All right. I was recently on a guest panel, and I was with today's guest, Maggie Testani, and I was blown away by the information that she shared with the Love It High School seniors. That's where we were talking. And shout out to Slater Nally, American Idol, almost third runner-up. I don't know. He's amazing. But Maggie is a Marist school graduate, and that's where my kids went. And she is taking the time to share today her extreme wisdom. And so thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Trisha. Thanks for inviting me to be here. And it was so great to connect at the Love It panel and to make that connection too about Marist as well. It's always a small world.
It is a small world. And I'm at my beach house, but she is in Atlanta. So she's holding down the fort there. Why don't you tell what you do, and then we'll back up, because I want to hear about she went to Clemson, and I want to hear about her. I want y'all to hear about her Clemson sorority life. But let's back up and talk about the actual reason why you're here.
Yeah. So currently I am a mental health therapist at Grow Counseling here in Atlanta. I'm at our Buckhead office. I mainly work with tweens and teens, some young adults. I do some college kids. But my heart is definitely with kind of that teen population, working with crisis or suicidal ideation. Definitely that transitional time. I love working with that time period and thinking through next steps and advocating for yourself, building resilience, managing stress, and just making decisions that will promote well-being moving forward.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And she has this, I forget what it's called. She'll tell you about it later. But so, okay. And it's very cool, and it's very, I think, timely, and it's really important what you have to share with us. So, but first, let's back up to college. And what year did you graduate high school? Because I think my kids were younger than you.
Yeah, they were younger than me. I graduated Marist 2015.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then you went to Clemson, and did you go through Rush? I know the answer to this.
I did. So I decided to go to Clemson. Do you want me to kind of tell you why I decided to go to Clemson?
I want all the things. I want to know everything.
Yeah. So for me, I definitely wanted to go out of state. And I was very lucky and fortunate to have the opportunity and resources to go out of state. I didn't have a school that my family was already super passionate about me going to.
Right.
So I was kind of lucky to have a clean slate of where was I going to go? And I'm also
I had someone on this podcast who wanted to go, I think it was Auburn, and her family was a big LSU family, and they didn't pay for her college. They were that adamant about it. So anyway,
okay.
Go ahead.
It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also super indecisive. And when I make a decision, I want to be sure about it. So I toured Clemson 3 times, different seasons, to make sure that I was really passionate about it. And I loved it all 3 times, all 3 different seasons, different weathers.
Okay, I've never heard of anybody doing that. That is thorough. That is very thorough. And I feel like my friend Missy, who also is a Marist mom, she is very thorough in her decision making. I am the polar opposite. I mean, I decide something. I decided to start this company, my company, and it was up and running the next week. Like,
there you go.
But of course that leads to mistakes sometimes. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm definitely thorough and dedicated behind my decision. So you could say that. But I always loved going to Clemson. I loved that it was 2 hours from home, so not too far. I just loved the people every time I went. I think 2 main selling points for me. One, a little more shallow. I loved that it was on the lake. I loved that I could.
That's not shallow. That gives probably, I mean, water gives me peace, and it grounds. Well, that kind of doesn't make sense that water would ground me, but that's why I'm at beach house right now. Water is important to me.
Yes, I think me too. I think it was good for my mental health of like being able to take walks by the lake. And that was something my friends and I would do all the time. Second, I loved that there was a set program for me to double major in what I was interested in at the time. I wanted to be a teacher. And so I was doing secondary education. So I would major in that as well as major in English. And I loved that Clemson had that set track to double major. So I was definitely super interested in that. And that was kind of what ended up selling me overall, as well as liking the campus, liking the people.
Did you know anybody that was already at Clemson?
So that's a great question. I knew like 1 or 2 people from Marist that had gone, didn't know them super well, which kind of leads me into the rushing part for sorority, because I felt like I had an open mind going through that.
Right.
Because I didn't know too much. Nobody really knew me. And I don't feel like social media in 2015 was what it is now. So I didn't know all the things about the sororities or even really cared to know. Like I kind of wanted it to be my experience and just keep an open mind. Of always been pretty good at making friends, like who was going to be my group of people. So I had a pretty positive experience with that. And
I just recorded a podcast this morning, and that, I asked her, and I'm going to ask, well, you're going to tell different things, but I was like, what are your top 5 pieces of advice for someone going through rush? And her first thing, and she had a positive rush experience too, is she was like, don't look at Reddit, which is, she's younger than you, but like, that's such an important point, just to have an open mind and go into it without all the noise in the back of your head. So,
and there is a lot now. I have clients now that, tell me they have to have their Instagram a certain way now because girls will look at it and whatnot. Yeah. And I just, to me, I can't imagine. That was just not my experience.
Right.
Going through it. And I mean, even being on the recruitment side, once I was in a sorority, I decided to do at Clemson, it was called Pi Chi, the recruitment counselor, which is funny. I joined Tri Delta at Clemson.
Delta, Delta, Delta.
I was a Delta, Delta, Delta. And I loved it. And I was super involved in my sorority. I was community service chair 1 year and then academic standards chair another year. And then I did Pi Chi for girls going through recruitment. So I unaffiliated during the summer and helped girls going through recruitment, which I think is funny because both of those in the sorority and outside the sorority led to my career paths.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of counseling that goes on during rush, which is, what we do. So I do know that probably would, I always say I do not have a counseling degree, but something that struck me when you and I were talking on the Love It panel is so much of what your advice was mirrors what I do. It's, and again, I'm not claiming to. I wouldn't probably had the grades to get into school, grad school. I know I didn't. But yeah, there's a lot of that. And you're very good at it. You're also very calm and, in a non-calm situation. So you had a great rush. Is that what you're?
Yeah. I mean, obviously rush was exhausting in the heat of South Carolina for multiple days.
Right.
But I did enjoy it. Like, it ended up being fine. I think the best piece of advice my pie guy gave me that I try to tell girls that ask for it going to rush upcoming is to look at the girls in line with you as you're going through your final rounds of rush, because those would be the girls in your pledge class.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And that stuck with me.
Yeah. And it's also, that goes to something that a lot of people aren't that aware of. A sorority may have a certain reputation, which hopefully you're not listening to it, but that can change, and it does change. Mm-hmm. And so that advice to look at the girls in line with you is really key, because those are going to be the girls that you're interacting with. So, and like anything, there's cycles and there are different vibes. And so that it's really important to look at the people who are going through rush and in the later rounds with you. I mean, everybody's in the first rounds.
Yeah.
So that's great advice.
Yeah, that definitely was something I took to heart, as well as I think to another piece of advice later on was we had a really great speaker come my senior year in my sorority that was talking about, I guess it could be controversial whether or not to put your sorority on your resume. And maybe that's something you've talked about. And for, her stance on it was like, well, depending how involved you were in the sorority, you could definitely utilize this as leadership skills. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was something that was a huge part of my college career as leadership skills. In a way, I was involved in particularly the academic standards. I was managing all the girls' grades and meeting with the girls and holding standards meeting, even though I was also their age, and having to facilitate those conversations and trying to be a positive support for people in my sorority. So I thought that was also a really interesting piece that I reflected on as well, is like utilizing sorority experience to also be more than just like fun and friendship.
Right.
It could also be leadership later on, and connections and networking. Mm-hmm. And I think Pi Chi too, and again, it's called different things at different colleges.
We had that exact conversation. The two people that I recorded with earlier, they went to FSU. And I think they said it was Gamma Chi there. I can't remember now. It was only 20 minutes ago, but I still don't remember it.
You've been busy.
So it's so funny because whenever I listen to my podcast, we pre-record them. It's like listening to a whole new thing because I don't remember what we talked about. So it's so fun for me.
I love that. But yeah, I think that too gave me insight as well into something I think I talked about on the Love It panel in terms of managing expectations going into something like college or rushing a sorority, is acknowledging what your expectations are. If you are going in with, I need to be in this specific sorority, then yeah, if there is a setback, then that is going to be harder to cope with. Mm-hmm. So acknowledging, where you're even at with what you're expecting going into this.
Oh, I love that. That's great advice. Yeah.
Because I think that goes into like building some of those resiliency skills going into college, is knowing for yourself, what am I expecting this to be? And knowing that those are just expectations and that might not be the reality.
I'm writing this down. That's why there's a little dead air here, guys.
That's okay.
Okay, so that leads me to, you're obviously very wise, and talk about Grow and what you do and Bootcamp and all. Talk about why you're here.
Sure.
While I write, you talk, I'll write.
Sure. So I guess I'll fast forward like a few years. So I did do the teacher thing for a bit.
Where did you teach?
So after Clemson, I did get my degree in education, and I decided to do Teach for America, actually. And yeah,
You're the second person. No, you're the second person on my podcast who did that exact thing. They were Pi Chi at Georgia,
No way.
and then Teach for America. That's so crazy.
I might even know them.
Mary Corder Harold. Do you know her? She was a Phi Mu at Georgia.
I actually don't, but I would love to.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So funny. Yeah, I did Teach for America. I got placed in Chicago. So I lived up there for a bit. I taught high school English in the South Side Chicago for a few years.
Oh, how was that? South Side is rough, right? Or am I wrong? I don't know.
It was challenging, for sure. It was challenging. It was challenging in many, many ways. But in hindsight, I'm very thankful for the growth. Talk about building some resiliency and the growth of where I am now. It makes a lot of sense, I think, in the counseling field to where I am now. And I'm thankful for the skills it's given me now. But it was a 2-year commitment. I ended up staying at my school for about 3 years and then switched to a different school for 1 year in the Chicago area. So I did give a good try at the teaching up there. And I loved my students up there. Like they challenged me, but they also gave me so much grace and welcomed me into their community. And just, they taught me too, like a lot of things that I just did not know about. It was not my world. And they taught me a lot.
That's cool.
And I was also 23, trying to teach high schoolers in the South Side of Chicago. So it was different, but I did that. I taught, and I think that experience, the kids I was working with were experiencing such deep-rooted trauma that came up daily that I became more interested in mental health. And I felt like that was something I was better at being able to support than teaching. I felt like teaching grammar lessons didn't feel as important as showing up for them mentally, or
right.
I felt I was better at maybe trying to help them cope or offering to assist them with basic needs or offering to assist them with whatever they would need, whether that's just being a trusted adult in their life.
Right.
Or holding a space for them to vent. I felt like that became more important to me than the grammar. And
I'm sure it was more important to them too. I mean, they don't even know how to diagram a sentence. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think for anybody, that's, if you're struggling or if you need that kind of support, it doesn't really matter what your freaking sentence looks like.
Yeah. And I love English. No hate on English.
Yeah, I was an English major. I mean, I kind of do have a little hate on English because it was the wrong major for me, because I was like, wait, why am I reading Beowulf? Like, I don't care at all. But anyway, so I think that's amazing. So that's what led you to go to grad school, right?
Right. So I started grad school during like the COVID era, and I spoke to some of my mentors, actually one of them being like a former school counselor at Marist, of like, what should I do grad school wise? Because I was debating, like, do I want to do school counseling or do I want to do like more clinical mental health counseling? So I wanted a more flexible program to where I could have both options once I graduate. And so I was kind of like, at this time, it makes more sense to do something online because we're in this pandemic and, there was a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. So Wake Forest had a great online mental health counseling program that I applied for and got into and started around COVID time. So I did that while teaching, which was also challenging.
Yeah.
But I loved it. And those professors were really great about utilizing like the office hours and all the things. Like, even though it was virtual, they were still really accessible. And we had a few residency things where we would go in person and do trainings with them on campus. So I kind of feel like I got a nice like hybrid experience with that as best as you could during those COVID years. So I did the Wake Forest program. I ultimately decided on that. I also didn't know where I wanted to live long term. Like, did I want to stay in Chicago? Did I want to come back to Atlanta? I didn't know. So I decided to come back to Atlanta end of 2023 and do my full year of internship in Atlanta. And so I did that here. And then ultimately, once I graduated, landed my job with Grow. And so, yes, spoiler alert, I decided to do private practice, then stay in schools. But I still feel like what's nice about private practice is I have a ton of flexibility. So we still have these strong relationships with the schools in the area.
Right. Yeah, Lovett was a big fan of yours, or is a big fan of yours.
I love that. And I love it. And it's so nice to still be in communication with them and have these like personalized relationships to be able, like, if I need to have a client or parent meeting, can go do so and have the school counselor's phone numbers and still be working with the schools, but I'm not working in a school.
Right.
It's still like I have
better
my
lunches
space.
Probably.
Or my lunch, like I make my own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to give a little bit of advice.
Sure.
Like you gave it at Lovett. I think this is great for rising college freshmen. I think it's important. So how about it?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I could give some pieces too of like what I gave at Lovett without spoiling my whole college bootcamp thing. But ultimately, what I kind of came up with is my little college bootcamp idea was just some things I was thinking about that I wish I had thought through a little bit more before going off to college in terms of social emotional support. I know these private schools and some of the public schools are doing a great job of supporting their students academically and giving them resources, like, and getting them into college. Like, I fully know they're doing that. But sometimes I think some of these like smaller pieces, for example, setting boundaries with parents and expectations, is that maybe talked about before you're going off to college.
Right.
So my little boot camp is just like a one session thing where I have made some handouts and flyers and resources that I individualized to each client of these resources.
Oh, wait, they're individualized for each client?
Yeah. I mean, depending on where they're going to college. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And what
I don't think I recognize that. I mean, remember or knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. So individualize where they're going to college and in terms of like where those resources may be on campus. And if they have like specific things they're worrying or wondering about, I'm happy to go ahead and try my best to answer that for you and do that work for you so that you don't have to, go ahead and dig that up yourself.
Right.
But this way too, they're already connecting. I think one of my pieces of advice is I wish I had a therapist before going to college so that I could have a person to touch base with back at home for support. And I think offering this is giving that opportunity, whether that's me or with someone else, like having a person you could touch base with for mental health support, but also acknowledging a lot of these colleges have great free resources for mental health support. But do students always know about that? I don't know. I think it's gotten better, for sure.
Well, I think it's also, and we have touched on this podcast before, it's also a matter of numbers and accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard for colleges, and I'm not ripping on colleges because it's very hard for sororities. It's very hard for the sheer number of people that are needing that kind of support.
Oh, yeah.
Mental health. It's really hard for the colleges to have that built in. It's just hard. It's a numbers thing. And the numbers of people are growing that need this kind of support in college. So
totally. Yeah. With staffing too.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely agree. But I think at least maybe the conversation around that's available at colleges now is more helpful. Like I wasn't fully aware of that when I went to Clemson.
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. But it existed. But yeah, to your point, it was like they had a wait list even when I did find out about it.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Like,
yeah. Which, having this in place before you go is, I think, very important.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So I think that would be one thing. But yes, ultimately the boot camp is kind of just a session to touch base with some of these concerns, give the resources, give these things to think about. So I'll share some of those tips. I think one of them that I really have found is planning ahead with family and friends at home to find those times that you're going to check in or when they're going to visit. So
I'm writing.
yes, write it. And I shared that at Love It as well. But I think that helps with, because every family is totally different. And communication may or may not be a struggle, but that goes ahead and sets a boundary and expectation around, are we going to be checking in every day? Are we going to show up for the first football game? Are we going to do stuff with our kid at that first game? Are we going to not do stuff with our kid? Does our kid want us to be there?
But what if they don't know that ahead of time?
Mm-hmm.
So like I would have known that I wouldn't want I mean, I love my parents, but I would have known that I didn't want them there. But some people may think, and it also changes. I see a lot. And I'm not even trying to argue with you, but obviously, of course, I wouldn't try to argue with you. I think you're brilliant. But I see that happen. So there's a lot of communication until our clients get their footing. And then they're like, bye. I don't need to talk to you every day. But then, like for, my purposes, rush and the days leading up to it and the days right after it, there's a lot of communication. But then once they really find their people in the sorority or whatever, they then don't need that as much. So is that something that you think should be fluid or,
I think that's a great point. I think what I'm hearing in that instance is the child, as a child would, is leaning on parents in moments of crisis, support, help. I'm panicking about rush. I'm panicking about making friends. I'm new here. And then the moment they're feeling good, they're like, I'm good. So parents maybe knowing, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the parents need to set their expectations.
Sure. Yeah. And parents also knowing, okay, maybe if child starts reaching out again, is it a crisis?
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
That's what I'm hearing as you give that example.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think, when I say communication, I mean, child and parent expectation of like, is this we touch base weekly? Is this we touch base every day? Are we just chilling? Like maybe you already have a pretty solid like casual relationship where you already touch base every day and like college isn't going to change much. Like you're already a pretty independent family. So I think it would depend on what those dynamics are. Some people are maybe a really close-knit family and they will get homesick when they get there. And so I think going ahead and planning some of those check-in things, like whether that is first football game or Thanksgiving break, seeing your home friends when you get home, gives kids something to look forward to. Gives them a sense of like, okay, well, I know I have Thanksgiving break coming up. That's when I get to see my friends again. I have something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's good.
But I would also say, in that sense of the kids that are, they found their friends, they found the sorority and they're like, parents, I'm good. I am living my best life. Then having that conversation around what the independence means. And if we're respecting the independence.
Oh, I love that. Respecting independence.
Yeah. If we're respecting that independence for the child, what's the full extent of the independence? Does that include financial independence? Does that include, like we're going to fully respect your academic independence? Like, let's have that conversation around if you're going to be independent with your friends, we're trusting you in this aspect. Let's make sure we're trusting you in all the other aspects as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Trust. I'm writing down. So that's a good thing to, that's a good thing to get in place as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's like an easy thing to say, like just have the conversation, but
right.
sometimes it is like, okay, well, what's the conversation we're going to have? And so that's where I was already thinking about like, these would have been some good conversations I could have had before I could have started college.
Right.
And I would be happy to share with people.
Yeah. No, and that's amazing. And with your, your demeanor, which is very calm, cool, and collected, I'm sure that people can hear that from you. So in your boot camp, is it called Skills I Wish I Knew Before College?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to read these. I just pulled it up. I'm going to read these topics that you cover. And if you have any specific thoughts, making friends, how to find your people and build solid friendships, find your people. There's a song by Drew Holcomb that I always put on Instagram when I post, find your people. Someone sent it to me and I love that because that's why I do what I do.
I have to listen.
Coping with stress. So tips for dealing with school pressure, homesickness, anxiety, and tough days. Money smarts, budgeting hacks to avoid being broke before the semester is over. Time management. This is a huge one. Balancing classes, social life, and self-care. One good thing about Greek life is they help you with that. You will have the resources, you'll have study hours, that kind of stuff. But having a little bit intentionally getting that into place is important. And taking care of yourself, sleep, food, movement, mental health actually matters. And resilience, handling setbacks and staying motivated when things get tough. And that is also pivoting. Being able, like you did, to pivot is important. And then using campus resources and finding, like we talked about, finding the help you need. So that's what your boot camp's about. And do you have like just a couple more pieces of advice based on that? And then if someone wants to sign up for your boot camp, we'll show them how.
Sure. So I think another thing that I would share, two things I was also thinking about. I think one of them I also shared at Love It. But another thing I would think about in terms of the handling setbacks and making friends piece, I think speaking into both of those would be knowing going into college what your core values are. I love Brene Brown's work on core values. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not. I'm writing it down though.
Oh, yes. She has this, I guess I'm giving a spoiler alert on something I love to utilize in a session, but she has a great activity on values. And obviously there's like a million different values you could choose from. And I think it is harder as a teen to really hone in on 3 values that you really like stick to. And then I love like exploring what those words or values mean to you and why. Because everyone has a different definition of, so for example, a value could be respect or authenticity or humor. And like, why do those matter to you? Because when you're thinking about values, you're thinking about how you show up in relationships, how you show up in jobs, how you want to be treated, how you view the world, basically. So when you're going off to college, I personally think like for your own social emotional health, I think it's important to know what your core values are. And maybe that is like faith. Maybe that is like some sort of strong belief you hold and how you want to treat people.
Right.
And so going into college, holding on to that and then finding your people or your organization or your academics that add to that and fuel you and match that energy to be able to go and do the things you want to do with your life. You know, hopefully find the career you want to find the friends you want to have. So I think it's important to like, it's hard to say like know who you are, but have a sense of self going into college.
Oh yeah, I say that all the time for Rush. I mean, in order to find your people, you have to know who you are.
And I think that that's ever growing per se of like, there's always ways you're improving or new things you're learning about yourself and new ways we adapt to life because life is ever fluctuating.
Right.
And new people come into our life, new experiences happen. But I think our values stay pretty consistent with us throughout life. They may tweak here or there how we view them. But I think that's a really important thing to think about, particularly going off to college, of like what values hold true to you.
Yeah.
Because I think in those moments when things get tough or when you're put in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, or when you're in a peer pressure situation, like, are you living up to your values? Are you respecting your values?
Love that.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing you were going to talk about? What was it? I forget. You probably remember.
Piece.
Yeah, your second piece.
My second piece. This to me was like a staple of, I think, not only college, but also moving to a new city after college is finding your new favorite place on campus or near campus.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, because I think that becomes a built-in accountability, whether or not you know it's going to be. So whether that's a workout class you're doing every Monday, whether it's the same coffee shop you go to every day, whether it is the same library spot every Thursday, Friday, whatever it is, you found your new favorite place.
I'm going Monday, Tuesday for the library spot. Just saying. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's not Thursday. I don't know
Maggie's
why
like,
that came
on Friday night, if you find your favorite library spot.
And also, let me clarify, I was not there on Friday night.
Oh no, I'm just laughing because I mean, some people are and great for them, but for me, I was not finding a favorite library spot any day for me. But anyway, that just kind of struck me when you said whether it's your favorite library spot on Thursday and Friday. Okay, continue.
I did have a favorite library spot though, but maybe not Fridays. But yeah, for me, it was like, I had a favorite workout class I did and a favorite coffee shop. And for me, it was, if I wasn't showing up to that coffee shop around the same time on Tuesday, Thursdays, like I went like all 4 years of college, I had a barista there that would text me and she would be like, "Are you good?"
Oh,
like,
wow. Love that.
Yeah, she'd be like, "You didn't come in today." And like that small little action meant everything to me by junior and senior year, because there were days that I was like feeling sick, or I was just like, gosh, like school is hard. I'm not sure with my major, like whatever. And that small built-in accountability that I kind of low-key built for myself, and I didn't know I was doing it.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, by having a favorite spot. I mean, granted, I was spending $7 on a coffee every Tuesday, Thursday, but it was...
Well, you're getting a lot more for that $7 than just coffee.
Yeah. Exactly. It was
that's going to be the theme of this podcast, Maggie. You're getting a lot more, not that we need a theme. You're getting, that could be your observation of the day. You probably have one, but you're getting a lot more for that $7. Wait, what kind of coffee costs $7? What's your coffee order?
Clemson, South Carolina coffee. At the time, there's only one coffee shop. Now there's like 3.
Gotcha.
What did I get there? They had like little specialty. I used to get like it was either called like the Panda Bear or the White Bear. It was like really sweet.
I had a client, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And so one of the things that I talk about, I'm totally digressing right now, but one of the things that I talk about is to not treat Rush like an interview, because, and like, so we don't tell our clients like, these are the questions you're going to be asked, because that's not a way to build a genuine, build a genuine connection. But perfect example of that is one of our clients went into a house and they literally talked about their coffee orders. And so like, you can't prepare for that. But what you can prepare is, to be able to listen and pivot, or, not even pivot, just genuinely like, talk about your coffee order. But I digress. I love the find your new favorite spot and the accountability that comes with it. And I also love the camaraderie that comes with like a workout.
Yeah.
And that's another place. Harlan Cohen was on this podcast and he was talking about find something that your acceptance is automatic, meaning
I love that.
you are going to be accepted no matter what. So a workout place is one of those places, and coffee shop is one, or, you know, a club that doesn't have tryouts, that kind of stuff. And that is really important to have that in addition to, or instead of, you know, it's your sorority acceptance is not automatic. You know, you have to go through Rush, and, you know, but something that you said you did it without even knowing you were doing it, but doing that is important.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice, because I think a lot of college is trying to be accepted into things.
Right. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I mean, societies, you know, business clubs, you know, all the things. There are a lot of things that you have to go through a process for, internships, that kind of stuff. But finding, and I think he says 2 or 3, I can't remember, but that's, you know, that goes along with what you're saying too. Which leads me, Maggie Testani, Marist, Clemson, Wake Forest. I thought before she agreed to come on this podcast, I was probably falling asleep at some point and I thought she went to Wake Forest, and she was like, I'd love to come and talk about my Wake experience, but that's not where I went to college. I was like, oh, that's probably.
I was like, I can talk about my online days,
which would be very helpful for you guys for sure. Okay, so before we tell where listeners can find you and how they can do this boot camp, Bama Rush Talk popularized the hashtag OOTD outfit of the day for Mad Rush. I'm repurposing hashtag OOTD into observation of the day. So what is your hashtag observation of the day?
So I'm glad you gave me a heads up about this, because I did ponder on it.
Yeah, and it's I also say this quite frequently. I can tell when I send this stuff to people whether they are going to put any thought into it or not. And I gambled or thought, if I were a betting person, and I am sometimes, I would have bet that you put some thought into it.
Oh, Trisha, I did. So I appreciate that. So it's almost an OOTD in both aspects, because I got a sweater in a little boutique in Naples, Florida with my grandma in January with a lobster on it.
Uh-huh.
And it's really cute, very coastal.
I can picture it.
Yeah, very cute. And recently I was on TikTok. I guess that's like the sweater of the summer, is this lobster sweater. And Target is now selling one.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted to share that I think I'm ahead of a trend with the lobster sweater. And maybe someone will resonate with that, because maybe other people have the lobster sweater now from Target, but mine is not from Target. Mine is from Naples, Florida, little boutique.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it was not Target price either at Naples, Florida. So there's that.
But apparently that's sweater of the summer.
Sweater of the summer is the lobster sweater. I'm going to Rhode Island, Connecticut, whatever this summer. So I need to get a lobster sweater.
You do. You do.
I don't think that I want to wear a sweater in the summer, but that's just for another day as I boil a
It's very lightweight.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's like for the evening, you know.
All right. So where can listeners find you?
Yes. My email's super easy, Maggie@growcounseling.com. My Instagram, I try to be active on. I'm no influencer by any means. But
none of us are.
Yeah. It would be Maggie_Grow Counseling on Instagram.
Okay, great.
And then of course our Grow Counseling website, I'm on there as well.
And so for this boot camp, did they just message you that they want to do it and it's a 1-session thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think that's a cool thing for you listeners to do, just to have a little, like we have for our clients, a little off before they go to college. We do a little off you go, make sure everything's in place as far as Rush specific. But I think that's a great little, or little is probably not the right word, but that's a great little thing you're doing, Maggie.
It's okay. I use little a lot, and I realize people don't love that word.
Your life's work is a great little thing you're doing.
And it is.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And I think that your advice is amazing. And I can't wait to share it with you guys listening.
Thank you so much, Trisha. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great summer.
Thanks. Welcome to Time Out with Trisha. Because can you really give advice if you don't speak about yourself in the third person? I don't think so. This is exactly how I speak to my clients. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Now let's get into it. So great advice from Maggie today. And I definitely think her little, we are trying not to use the word little, but her one session off to college boot camp is a great idea. And I feel like that you could benefit from that. And I also want to talk to you all about what she said about acknowledging what you're expecting. And that is important because if you acknowledge what you're expecting out of rush, for instance, if you acknowledge that you're expecting to be asked back to a certain house and you don't get asked back to that house, it can be a lot harder to deal with. So you need to realize that expectations are not reality. And I saw a quote years ago that was, disappointment comes from expectations. So if you're expecting something to work out in a certain way, it might not, and you might be disappointed. So you need to learn how to acknowledge that prior and be ready to manage your disappointment and pivot and move forward. And that's it for Time Out with Trisha. We'll see you on another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. Don't Touch My Radio. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Trisha Adams.